Hello everyone and welcome to this latest video discussion as part of the RICS Tech Partner Programme. My name is Andrew Knight and I've been with RICS for nearly 13 years now. My current role is within our thought leadership and analytics part of the organisation, and my role is to look at the impact of data and tech right across the built and natural environment. And with over 110,000 members worldwide, working right across the property lifecycle through land, planning and development, construction, valuation, brokerage, asset management, building, surveying. It's a really broad spectrum upon which data and tech is having a really profound effect. And indeed, our members also work across all the asset types, whether that's land itself, commercial, residential, alternative assets, and indeed infrastructure. And once again, I'm very happy to have William Doyle join me from what is originally Raildiary, but a lot of the reason we're catching up today is the fact that you've kind of renamed yourself. But perhaps before we get into that, William, it'd be great to get a bit of background on yourself and indeed Raildiary's origin story.
Thank you, Andrew, and yeah, thank you for having me on again. It's much appreciated. So yeah, my name's Will Doyle. I'm a quantity surveyor. That's my background. I've worked in infrastructure projects most of my career for contractors. 7 years ago now, I created a software company called Raildiary. As the name would suggest, we focus predominantly in rail. We're a software as a service. We provide a solution for people to move away from paper records and actually capture them in a really efficient way that they can actually improve what they do on site, but also use that data and learn from that data to improve projects in the future. And very recently, as of last week, we've renamed the business to Gather, which is the purpose of our discussion today.
Indeed. So from that point of view, I know we were discussing earlier the kind of the amount of kind of not so much disruption, but there are things to be done when you kind of rename a business. And I guess it's really interesting to know the kind of inspiration behind your decision to expand and change the name and move this focus beyond just the rail sector into this more broader construction sector industry focus. What's been the factors that's made you go through this pain, as it were?
No, it is a pain. I think that you don't understand all the little admin tasks that are often required, from changing the bank details to changing the website. But for us, this was evolution, not revolution. The name change was an obvious one because over the last 6 to 12 months, we've been working on projects that are not rail, projects that are in the highways environment, huge tunneling schemes, utilities assets. So actually changing the name was probably a little bit overdue, to be honest. We probably spent too much time worrying about what the name was because our clients were already gaining the benefits in these other sectors. So yeah, it was a timely change, really.
So when you chose the name Gather, you obviously were thinking about capturing some kind of title that would reflect this expanded scope and obviously benefits it would bring to you in terms of the way you're perceived. So, how do you see this brand working, and how do you see people almost interpreting the word Gather?
Yeah, for us, we spent a lot of time trying to get the name right. Raildiary had its place. It worked for us for the past 6 or 7 years, but it was time to change. For us, we wanted to have something that reflected what we did and didn't really pigeonhole us into one sector or just collecting a diary, really. We spoke to a lot of different people. We looked at different options. We asked our clients, what do you want it to call? What do you think it should be called? And people were not too concerned. They thought it should change, but they weren't too particular about what it was. One client said, "I don't care what you call it, Will. I like the product. You can call it Squirrel for all I care." And that's how we got to. But for us, when we think about more serious as a brand and how we should move forward, we felt like Gather was good. It's a verb. It reflected us gathering data, gathering insights, which is what the website's called, and it allowed us people to understand that it's about bringing things together, taking things that are unorganized and gathering them to use it for improving their projects, improving how we maintain and enhance infrastructure projects. And we thought Gather was a nice fit for that.
So as you move, Will, from serving a niche market where obviously you can be very focused in terms of the kind of benefits and value that you deliver, as you move now to this broader construction sector, and I guess it's a cliche to say that, but you'll have both challenges and opportunities as you move into what is, as you know, an incredibly broad sector, the whole built environment, all those different kind of service companies and contractors and types of objects and assets you'll be dealing with. So how have you kind of seen this sort of mix of challenge and opportunity that Gather will now be navigating?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And we immediately open our eyes to a much bigger market. We've got all different infrastructure types that we previously weren't thinking about building a product for, marketing to, and had clients. And the beauty of what we've done is, and I think I said before, was evolution, not revolution. We're not making wholesale changes. We've had the benefit of clients using the Raildiary Now Gather product in highways, in utilities, in tunneling schemes, in non-rail schemes for the last 12 months. And we've learned an incredible amount from them around how the product needs to evolve, which we've implemented a lot of those changes, but also how they operate, how they perceive things, what's important to them. And I think what's important in the rail sector is obviously not as important perhaps in the highway sector or aviation, or what those assets are. So for us, it's the rail environment's quite controlled. It's very focused on access to a live infrastructure asset, and other infrastructure types have the same challenges. We can perhaps learn from how we've collected that data, how we've used that data to inform how we use railway possessions, for example, better when it comes to the lane closures and works we're doing on a highway environment, and how that applies to other assets. Aviation is a great example of that, where there's limited access to kind of the airside environment. So for us, it's about speaking to as many customers as we can, learning from them, but also trying to apply the lessons we've learned and what the products developed in rail and all those use cases into those other industries, and bring that kind of fresh approach, really.
Indeed, and I get another objective I think that you've articulated around Gather is something obviously you share with us here at RICS around the whole sustainability agenda in construction and asset maintenance. You know, how's Gather going to help with that particular objective, that sustainability, which is so key now in terms of the net zero and reducing emissions and being more efficient in that way?
Yeah, sustainability is obviously really important. It's so important for our industry that we get this right. For us, sustainability means allowing people to do things more efficiently, cutting out the waste. So we perhaps can't help in terms of materials and things like that, and how we can reduce carbon, but we can actually reduce rework, reduce additional efforts to actually complete projects. And that makes projects much more sustainable because we're delivering them in a much more efficient way. People view that doing it more efficiently from a financial impact. So we can do projects quicker, so we could save time, but also we can actually avoid that wastage around materials, plant, labour, all the things that go into that core delivering of an asset. We can actually do this much quicker by using data to inform what is the most efficient way to deliver X, Y, or Z.
And I suppose in a similar linked way, Will, you've made once again productivity a key theme for Gather. I mean, how specifically are you going to work on that productivity theme? And you know, are there any particular features or innovations and approaches that you're excited about that will help with that key issue of productivity, which once again does link back, as you say, to sustainability as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the challenge with everyone at the moment working on huge infrastructure assets is doing more for less. How can we achieve this program? How can we achieve this without taking longer, spending more money? And for us, understanding productivity is how we do that. And it's not just focused on where we're unproductive, which is quite easy to do. We can say we've not achieved the plan, we didn't do this. It's very easy to say, oh, that's where it went wrong. Where we're seeing Gather be applied is actually understanding why things are really efficient. Why do we overachieve there? Why do we do 50% more on that shift? Or why is that team much more efficient than others? And actually take those lessons learned back in real time, using the data from a project site to say, this is best practice, this is why this team's much more productive, achieving higher outputs than others, and allowing wider projects or wider business units to actually understand that and apply it. I come from a culture of projects where we do a lessons learned at the end of a project. Gather moves us to the point where we're doing that every single day. What went wrong yesterday? What went well? How do we fix that? And how do we apply those lessons learned tomorrow? And that's how we become more productive. And it's a daily improvement rather than somebody saying, well, that's what went on that project. Let's learn for the next project. What if we could do that every day? And that's where the Gather stands out.
And I guess once again, you know, so many of these kind of topics are linked to some extent, but you know, the construction sector is often perhaps criticised for not really being as collaborative as it needs to be, given the number of participants involved in even relatively small projects. And obviously, Gather once again, I guess, would be aiming to facilitate this better collaboration amongst all these various stakeholders. And once again, how's that going to be improved, and what do you see as the measurable impacts? Because another theme I talk to a lot of people about is obviously ROI. People want to see that actually if they use these tools, they are getting a demonstrable saving and or productivity gain, or by getting this collaboration issue cracked, they are seeing much better performance that ultimately does feed down to the bottom line.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what people are looking for. That's what people come to expect, certainly from technology. So for us, it's 2024. Why are we arguing about facts? We should know what's happened on a construction site, on a project with our asset. We need to know that. That needs to be common across all stakeholders. We need to understand this is what happened on that particular day, and then we can deal with it. We can understand how we can improve and go back to that productivity point. And for us at Gather, it's about having that one record, that contemporaneous record, that we can understand this is what happened, this is how we improve. And for us, it's making that available, whether that be from an asset owner, a client, a contractor, a specialist subcontractor. We're all singing off the same hymn sheet. And I think that's kind of where we get to in terms of ROI as well. We can have that common data kind of environment. We can understand this is the way we capture data in a structured way. We can use that to work with other tech partners and integrate with other tools, because we shouldn't be duplicating or wasting effort and working that ecosystem of construction technology. And going back to your point about ROI, it's about understanding when you put all those together, what can we do? And for us, we obviously can save money, but you can only save so much money. And one of the things I learned when I came to the RICS Tech Partner Conference a few months ago was, like, there's a limit to how much money you can save, but there's not a limit to how much money you can make. How much value can we add to a project? That's where we should be focusing, rather than our ROI is we save X%. How much more value can we add? And I think that's where we probably need to reposition construction technology and other tools we use. It's about value adding rather than just a direct time or cost saving. This is how we can improve projects and make them a little bit better.
Now, it's an interesting point you make, isn't it, that there is that understandable focus on savings, but so often projects, perhaps they do come in on time or on budget, dare I say, but then they perhaps don't deliver all the features they were supposed to. So perhaps this is also a way of, harnessing that terrible tension of time and money and sort of functionality, and making sure that we deliver the functionality on time as well as bringing it in on budget or under budget. I guess, it's been hard over the last year or so, clearly, to ignore all the generative AI and all the things that have been happening in the sort of public domain, and the way that kind of technology has been democratized. And I guess with that backdrop of an increasingly quick and speedy evolution of technology, how do you plan to stay at the forefront of innovation to make sure that you are taking advantage of all these new bells and whistles, or however you want to call it, that are coming out on the marketplace?
It's a huge challenge, isn't it? It's a huge challenge for anyone involved in our sector and other sectors. And for us, it's about investing in the product, keep developing the product to stay at the forefront of that. The big focus area for us as a business is to kind of remove the silos. We're collecting this data. How can we create that ecosystem of other tools that are complementary, that our clients are already using, or their clients are already using? How can we work together to get the data out of the silos? The siloed way of working is really harming and hindering how we develop and use technology. So for us, it's moving that to that open API. How can we have our data easily talk to others? We need to remain structured. We need to talk about capturing the data in the right way, but why can't I use it in my planning tool, my BIM tool? Why can't I use it from a finance perspective or managing resource? It's about how we can kind of bring that ecosystem of technology partners to actually bring that all together, and that's what we're trying to push. That's the main goal for us in 2024 and probably into 2025.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting point you raised there, because once again, talking to so many people perhaps on the end user side of technology construction and property technology, is this desire to have this integration that people have been using a phrase to me quite often now. They don't want to have to open yet another tab on their browser, that they want this sort of seamless integration between products. I think that's an important point you make. One thing I'd like to ask you about, and you've used the word, I think, community in the last few seconds. It's obviously very powerful when you have people like yourselves who've got a background in the built environment, bringing technology and taking that to the construction sector. But I guess it must be a constant thing for you in terms of focusing on getting almost a kind of a community of people that you're working with to gather this ongoing feedback to make sure that you actually do enhance the product. We've just talked about all the great technologies there, but ultimately it's need to be technology for as a means to an end, not an end in itself. So are you looking at kind of almost getting a user group, or really trying to sort of structure the way you get feedback from what will be a much broader set of users now as you move from Raildiary to Gather?
Yeah, it's massively important, and it will be increasingly important as we have that broader use case as you described it. I think for me, a lot of technology is built for people that sit in an office, nice warm office, and look at fancy graphs or reports, and that used to be me. Where we forget and where I think we need to really focus on is the people collecting that data, or how we collect that data. And for us, we have this fictional person that we always think of as the person in the pouring rain at 3 a.m. on a wet construction site in the middle of Scotland. How do we make their life easier? How do we make it easier for them to do what they need to do, not fill in endless amounts of details and all this another tab on your browser or another app? How do we make their life easier? Because if we collect data and we think about that user, they make their life easier, and all the good stuff we talk about, reports, sharing data, collaboration, that relies on that individual. So for us, it's about not losing sight of that, but also thinking about who's the equivalent in the highway sector, who's the equivalent in those other sectors, and how does their pain point and their use case differ. And for us, it's about getting that feedback every single day. We will speak to users every single day, multiple users, and ask them what they think, what do they like, what do they not like, what would they like to be different, what would make their life easier. And that's great kind of anecdotal feedback, and compare that with stats around how long it takes to do things within a platform. You start to understand and remove those blockers. So yeah, our focus is continuing to be with that person in high-vis, person we're asking to collect that data for us, and the person ultimately delivering that project.
Yeah, as you say, it's important never to lose sight that they are the ultimate end user in the middle of the night in the pouring rain, aren't they? And
Yeah,
during the day in the pouring rain at the moment. But
yeah, exactly.
But either way, as you say, it's that usability right at that very sharp end of the sector that I think has to be, I guess, your starting point for everything you do in some respects, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah.
So looking ahead, I mean, you've done one of the difficult bits, which is, as we discussed slightly sort of jokingly at the beginning, the actual change of name. I mean, in terms of the roadmap ahead, in terms of the milestones or benchmarks that you've set yourself, you've obviously, decided to have quite a significant shift in terms of moving away from this very, niche approach to a broader strategic approach to the whole construction sector. What does that roadmap look like for yourself? What ambitions have you set yourself, and what will success look like, both for you and for the sector?
It's a really good question. So for us at the moment, 80% of our clients are rail, and we're aiming to kind of diversify that as we increase that total addressable market. We're now available to everyone in that sector. So we'll start to see probably that number reduce. That's not a bad thing. We're not losing our focus on rail. That is where our kind of core is, but actually understanding how we can work with people that work in rail, and then they now work in highways as well, because a lot of clients we found are not rail businesses, they're infrastructure businesses. They work across that. So how can we have that shared learning across multiple projects that feeds back to that kind of central team? And that's a big goal for us. How can we get people that work across multiple sectors and actually commonly collect that data so they can use that centrally and feed that back into that? And that's something that we've really talked about, rather than targeting people specifically in rail, specifically in highways, or whatever sector that would be. How can we get that kind of cross-industry collaboration? Because we think that's where the real learning is. Beyond that, it's about moving overseas. We've started to seed projects in Australia, in Canada. Our first project in Australia starts next week, which is really good. So it's how can we actually not just move outside of rail, but how can we move out of the UK, which has been our predominant focus for the past 5 years. And again, that as we broaden that market, our first job in Australia isn't in rail, it's a gas pipeline, so it is very different. And is how can we make sure we give the level of service, the level of user experience that people have told us they love, and we've got the feedback that says this is the right tool for them. How do we apply that in all those other sectors? So that's going to be really difficult. In terms of measuring us that, we use different tools to do that, but ultimately we want to know that people are getting value. Raildiary saved me X, or Gather. Now I need to get better at saying that, obviously, but Gather has saved me X. Gather has allowed me to do X, Y, and those anecdotal stories are what we really kind of love, and makes it all worth it, really. but showing those projects can be delivered efficiently. We can deliver projects on time, on budget, because there's a myth certainly in the UK that we can't do that anymore, but I firmly believe that we can. We just need to have the right people and the right tools, and we can enable them for success. So yeah, that's a huge part of what Gather's all about.
Indeed. Well, thanks, William. It's been really interesting to hear what the next stage of your journey now begins to look like, and it's going to be exciting months and years ahead for you. And in fact, I look forward to catching up again. Let's make sure that we have another discussion and see how this roadmap is moving forward for you. And as you say, it's exciting that you're not only looking at different areas of the sector, but also different jurisdictions with all the opportunities and challenges that brings up. But for today, thanks so much for your time, and I look forward to catching up again soon.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you for having me. That's great.